Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of ClueCon Weekly. Joining us this week is Shane Harrell from SignalWire, senior escalation engineer, but also developer and famous AI expert, at least within the company. And thank you for joining us today, Shane.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I wear many hats here, including the SignalWire one. But yeah, we'll be kind of doing a little AI demonstration today, and I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. So yeah, well, we're recording this on election day. We'll air a few weeks later, but I still find it fitting that we're doing something that's political in nature on election day. So, well, I'll let you take the stage, and if I have any questions, I'll ask away. Thank you, Shane.
Sure. Yeah. So yeah, as Luca mentioned, I'm going to be doing something that's kind of political in nature, although kind of a silly version of it, where I'm going to have our AI agent act as a pollster and ask me some questions about candidates and issues, and I'm going to give my answers, and it's going to get these questions from a database and then push the answers back into the database so that later on we can go and review the results and see how our AI agent can actually talk to third-party systems or relational databases, things like that. And kind of extrapolating further how useful it can be to pick an easy prompt that just follows a couple simple questions and really get some useful data from callers or people being called. So, okay, so to set this up, I'm running a Python script here. It's going to run a little Flask web application. I'm going to set it up so that when I call my SignalWire number, it's going to do a webhook into this application, and it's going to get the whole process rolling. It's going to connect me to my AI agent, who's going to determine that I'm a new caller and he needs to make a new user for me, and then start asking me some of these political questions. And the thing I want to point out is that my prompt is actually only, with spaces and everything, it's probably only about 30 lines. And really the biggest portion of it is just collecting some of that first user data. It's going to ask me my first name, last name, and my age in years. And then it's going to use that to create a record in the database. And then from there, it's going to determine, okay, I'm good to start asking questions that are stored in the database. And all it's going to do is pull each one out individually. It has no idea that there are any questions or any other thing that needs to be asked. It's only just waiting for the next question, and then it's going to record the answer. So pretty simple, 30 lines here, and most of it's just do this, ask them their name, and then start getting questions out of the database. So I have a couple of command prompts here. I'm going to go through each one, what I'm actually doing as I set it up. So here I am going to, well, actually I'm going to start here. I'm going to set up my ngrok tunnel so that I can actually get my webhook into my local machine here. So ngrok HTTP, I think I was using port 80. That could be something that is an issue. I can just pop down to the bottom here. Port 80. And I'm going to need this. That is the forwarding address for my web application so that I can actually into that. And I won't need that again. So I can go ahead and kind of minimize that as much as possible. And then I'm going to stick that here in the code for my webhook base. As the bot is getting new questions and shoving them into the database, it's going to need to know how to reach some of the other functions that are located within the script, so that base comes important. And then quickly, just kind of slide this over. I need to update my number to have that same webhook. So all I'm doing is just updating my signal wire number, which is for this demo. And then I'm going to make sure that it's set to a SWML script. And when the call comes in, hit that webhook and hit save. That's all the setup that I need to do as far as for configuring my signal wire number. So pretty simple there. Too many things here. All right, so in this box, the last thing that I need to do, or the next thing I need to do, I guess, is I actually need to set up what my questions are going to be. So I have 3 questions that I'm going to have the survey ask me so that we're not here all day. But to kind of show how this is set up and how something like this can be really quickly and easily configurable, I have no questions or anything in the database currently. So I'm just using SQLite for this. In a more advanced production environment, I'd probably recommend MySQL or Postgres, but SQLite works perfectly fine, especially when I'm using a lightweight Python script like this. It's kind of built right in. So I can show what the tables are. I just have answers, questions, and users. And if I were to select from questions, there's none in there. And obviously, since there's no questions, there shouldn't be any answers. And there's no current users. So database is completely empty, but I'm going to completely change that now by just pasting in some pre-made questions. So it's going to ask me these 3 questions, and it's between the 2 candidates for mayor, Miss Scarlett or Mrs. Peacock. Who do you think you'll be voting for and why? Will you be voting for Professor Plum or Mr. Green for governor? And what are your thoughts on issue 1, which is a proposed law to mandate eating pizza on Fridays, which I think is probably a good idea to eat. I figured you would be. So anyway, that sets that up. So now our database is ready to go. The only thing we have left to do is run the script here and hope that I didn't miss any steps and that it actually runs. And then it doesn't start yelling at me. So we're going to do this Python. All right, cool. So I think we're ready to go, and I can go ahead and make my call in. And as I'm kind of talking to this, I'm going to be trying to show what's going on in the database. Here, you'll see each webhook is going to hit, and then it's going to output what the SWML response is going to be. So it will actually say, thanks, I recorded that last answer. Here's the next one. And as it's going through that, I'll try to show it's updating the database as well, but only have 2 hands. So I'll be trying to do both, but just kind of pre-explaining that you'll see kind of the logs from the web server here, and then the database stuff here. And again, you can ignore the third box there. All right, so let's do it and hope the AI is going to be nice to me and behave.
Hello, I am Ernie, the election bot, a virtual pollster for the upcoming election. I would like to gather some information from you. Let's get started, shall we? May I have your first name, please? You can either say or spell it for me.
Shane.
Thank you, Shane. Now, may I have your last name, please? You can either say or spell it for me.
Harrell.
Thank you, Shane Harrell. Now, could you please provide me with your age in years?
25.
Wow.
Thank you for providing your age, Shane Harrell. Now, let's move on to the survey questions. The first question is, between the 2 candidates for mayor, Miss Scarlett or Mrs. Peacock, Who do you think you will be voting for and why? Please take your time to answer.
I'm going to be voting for Miss Scarlett because I agree with her platform.
Thank you for your response. Shane Harrell, your answer has been recorded. Now, let's move on to the next question. The question is, will you be voting for Professor Plum or Mr. Green for governor? Please take your time to answer.
I'll be voting for Mr. Green for governor.
Thank you for your response. Shane Harrell, your answer has been recorded. Now, let's move on to the next question. The question is, what are your thoughts on issue 1? A proposed law to mandate eating pizza on Fridays? Please take your time to answer.
While I do love pizza, I think I'm going to vote against that because I don't think you should mandate something like that.
Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Shane Harrell, your answer has been recorded. Now, let's move on to the next question.
Okay. So
you're a pizza libertarian. Good to know.
Yeah. So it should be up to you on whether or not you want to have your own pizza. So anyway, as I was showing here, and I cut off the call before it was completely done, but when the call came in, it actually, let me see if I can mode. Make this look a little bit nicer. That really didn't make it look that much nicer. Pull this out. So now you can see it's asking the questions, it's recording the answer as it goes, and then I can go back and link some of these tables together and actually get some real valid data out of what a user might say. And I can, I didn't do a very good job of explaining what was going on there. So I pasted in a select command that has a bunch of joins and things on it, and still not formatted very nicely, but is more showing what each question is, and then joined it with the user table so that I can see, okay, Shane Harrell said that between the two candidates for the question of between the two candidates for mayor, what the answer actually was, and that I was going to vote for Peacock because of her platform. So I can go back later and retrieve all kinds of results and really dig down into that data and analyze it. And over thousands of calls or tens of thousands of calls, I can start to see which way people are leaning. Just as you would do for a human being that's making these polling calls and trying to determine the results of an election or predict the results of an election before it happens. So thought that was a little fun way to kind of celebrate election day here is show off what you can do with our AI agent in that way. So that's basically the entirety of the demo there. Pretty quick, pretty simple. Like I said, it isn't very much for the prompt writing, and really a lot of it just happens to kind of happen in these functions within the SWML that allow some of the other things to happen, and those are pretty easy as well. There is a demo of how to do something like this that I wrote as well. And you can find that on the SignalWire blog site. If you search for AI agent survey bot, that'll come up.
We'll put the link to that in the on the video description. So
yep.
We'll
we'll
have it for the people.
Cool. So yeah, that gives you it's pretty much the same basic code, only it has different questions. It isn't necessarily geared towards this election facade, but a quick way to get something like this up and running within just a few minutes. Gives you all the code and step by step on how to do it.
A few questions I would like to ask you.
Yeah.
Does the format, so you had the prompts written up in a specific format. Does the
Yes.
format matter when it comes to the bot? Like, is it better to write up the questions using kind of markdown look like?
It
Does it
does.
help?
It does help. And the reason being is the way that the questions are given is that, or especially like for whether or not it finds me in the first place as a user, it says continue with step 2 or start at step 2. And that's asking my first name, last name, those personal details. If I already had a user record, once it finds me, or if I call back and it sees that I've called before, it'll say start at step 3, so I can completely skip one part of the prompt without having to go through step 1 and step 2 and all the middle steps in between step 2 and step 3, like 2.1, 2.2, all those. Ask me this name, that name, how old in years. So it does help to keep things separated and give you an ability within a function to say proceed to X step and keep things separated. So I think that might be a little bit of a sneaky pro tip there is using Markdown will enhance your ability to keep different things within the prompt, keep them separated so that you have different blocks of what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Which may also be a secondary part of that question. Maybe just, well, Shane, why didn't you just add these questions into the prompt? Wouldn't that be easier if you have like step 6, ask this question, step 7, ask that question? And I can tell you that exactly why we did it this way is because the more text you're adding into the prompt, the more likely you're going to get the AI getting confused or start imagining things or start tripping over words. The more you're putting in, the more it's going to try to figure out what you're actually trying to say. Since human speech probably isn't equal to what the AI thinks that it's trying to thinks you're trying to say. So when we're getting a question and having it asked by the AI here, we're doing two things. We're keeping it out of its initial prompt so it doesn't understand, like it's not figuring that in. It's not getting any bias towards it. It's not doing anything like that. And on top of that, it's keeping your prompt very clean, or I shouldn't say clean, but keeping it much more scaled down and more efficient. So we're actually using less tokens to be able to do each step than we would be to use a huge prompt every single time. And that actually makes it cheaper for all parties involved, which is another big reason to do anything is to save money. So not only is this a better way to actually handle feeding questions into the prompt, but it also will save money in the long run. So that's why.
Yeah.
And I guess
Go ahead. The only thing, yeah, we need the other thing is that a large prompt is slower, but that's not really too much of an issue. It's more like using. So what you're doing here is you're using one AI interaction per question, and every time you're
correct.
giving it a small prompt, so you can make sure it has the right context and not too much of it.
Correct.
Because you're right, there's such thing as too much context. And given that, yeah, this build per token, the fact that using more times doesn't matter, as opposed to well, what I agree, what I've been experimenting with is doing one large slot filling, so effectively giving it the entire questionnaire in the prompt, and it tends to wander way too much. You
Agreed.
can get it to get your answers right, but actually you have to work as a customer. So you have to work with the AI to get the questions right, and that only works if you are the one that wrote the AI in the first place. So it doesn't really
Right.
work.
Yeah, and I've battled it as I was setting up for this particular demo. Is the more words that you try to put into your prompt, the more it starts to deviate and get weird. I'll say. Um, so less words and more precise words are generally way better and more effective than more words. And I think adding many questions into like a survey, just feeding that right into the prompt, is going to cause for confusion, and it's going to cause the AI to act in ways that aren't going to be wanted.
Yep. Well, yeah. There's still well. I always have to ask a few questions because I mean it's a podcast after all. What will be the next steps if you were to make this a bit more? Say you decided to make this into almost a product. What will be the next steps to make it better?
So I think that the next steps to make it better would be to really fine tune some of the code. I take that back. The first step would probably be to fine tune the prompt as much as possible. Even up to now, I can still tell based on the amount of test calls that I've done when the AI is going to behave with me and when it's not. And it's not 100% of the time that he does behave, or it behaves. I should say he. But the more that the more that you can make it more efficient and fine tune it, the more the better percentage that becomes. So I think I would do that. I would certainly clean up the code and probably wouldn't have this as just like a Python script that runs in a Flask module. I probably make a real web server, use Apache or Nginx, probably Nginx, I guess, make it more lightweight. Something like that that's a little bit more production ready. And I'd probably use, I mentioned this before, I'd probably use a relational database that's not SQLite. I would probably move it towards MySQL or Postgres. And I just say, both for it doesn't matter. It's personal preference at that point on what you want to do. But I would kind of take it from this idea and proof of concept and move it to more stable, long-term production-ready technologies like Nginx and MySQL or Postgres or whatever. And
One thing I would like to point out, or rather, it's a question, but
sure.
it's good to. This does is not by itself an assistant like this. It's not limited to running one call at the time, right? You could be doing 1,000 surveys at the same time.
That is correct. And actually, it's not limited to calling in either. There's also the possibility that you could be
Dialing out.
using, yeah, things like a dialer to call out and using voicemail or answering machine detection to determine, are you talking to a person or an answering machine? And you could be doing tens, if not hundreds of calls at a time to try to gather data like this. And it's not necessarily just for something that you'd want to be asking like this or that. You could be doing something like doing financial questions on how to
Yeah,
get
I
a
mean,
mortgage or a loan or something. Like that's a real world application of like, I just need to call in and I want to get a home loan, and can I get pre-approved? I make this much money. I have had my job for this long, so on and so forth. And the computer can just store all that data and determine right then and there on how to do that. And of course, they have websites that do that too. But um, you can easily do that with something like this.
what is super interesting in that regard is that call center operators that make this kind of, survey call can take anywhere between 6 and 8 calls per hour.
Mhm.
So to make even let's say 1,000 calls, you need 120 man hours, whether or not So that means you either need 20 workers for 1 day or 10 workers for 2 day or whatever. If you want to do 1,000 service in a minute, this will literally do it well in 5 minutes. The time that it takes
Sure.
for all the service to complete. So that's really the scale of it. And it's still, and the other thing I would like to point out, I've been playing with this, is that you're not limited to using the AI only. You can always drop back to a human. So
Okay.
what the use case here will generally be, most people will be happy with the survey and the AI, especially if it's a bit more complicated, like maybe not just the survey, something like confirming or changing your shipping address. So most
Mhm.
people would say, yes, that is still my address. AI is done there. Some people would say, I need to change my delivery address, and the AI will try and get the address by asking them to spell it and whatnot. Sometimes it will not get it, like any speech recognition will. It's not really AI. That will be the speech recognition that fails at something. Maybe the name is not an English sounding name of the street. I mean, something like that. So what you do is then you can always drop to an agent. Like you can tell the AI, if the user says the data entered is not correct, drop to connect them to this agent, and then you just dial into your call center, which at that point is only fielding calls that really matter, calls that they need help with. So
Right.
it's not replacing people; it's making them work more efficiently.
Right. Exactly. And they're not wasting their time on just checking menial things. Everything that they're doing is going to be something that really matters, or that the AI hasn't already checked for. So uh, definitely is a real world application there as well.
Good. So, well, Shane, I think this was super interesting. We'll put the links on the video so people can take a look. Of course, anybody is welcome to reach out to myself, Shane, anybody at SingleWire will patch you through to the right person, and
Yep.
that can help you figure out the situation. And I think, well, that's a great move. That's a great move. And we recently released a UI, right? So you can now build AI interactions without having to write code.
That is
Right?
correct.
Nice. So I'll go play with that too. Yeah, we're moving fast. Well, okay.
Yep.
Well, Shane, thank you for joining us today. It was a pleasure and great demo. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you so much for having me.
So Shane Harrell, senior escalation engineer at SingleWire, man of many hats, including a SingleWire hat, and showed us his AI demo today. Check it out. Come ask questions. We're super happy to help. Thank you again. And for the rest of the people, I'll see you next week. Goodbye.